The following recording comes to you from Anthology Film Archives in New York City.
Since what I'm showing tonight is really an incomplete work, and also since about this film in several parts before you see them. The whole work has a name. That name is Hapax Legomena, which is a piece of Greek scholarly jargon, which refers to words that occur only once, only one time. It means things said one time only. In the entire work of a poet, or sometimes in the entire literature of usually a dead or obsolete language. And that title will eventually bracket 6 parts, of which I am showing 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 tonight. The first film is called Nostalgia. It was finished last January. The second is called Critical Mass. That was shot here in February of last year with facilities, assistants, and performers from the cinema department here. The two performers, the two stars of the film, if you will, as many of you will recognize, are Barbara Di Benedetto and Frank Albetta. Larry Gottheim was the sound recordist. The third film began as a videotape, which was also made here last February. The tape was later modified very slightly and then kinescoped at the Experimental TV Lab at Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. The fourth film, when it is finished, you can bear this in mind, because you will not be seeing it in the films. The pieces of the film, I should say, complement each other. In some ways, there's a film that will be called Ordinary Matter, and I can't say very much about the image. The track will consist of 12 attempts, each by a different person, 6 men and 6 women, consisting each of 12 sentences, English sentences. 12 attempts to describe a physical object that already exists in the world, interlaced with each other. That physical object is the posthumous Duchamp work in Philadelphia that is called Given, 1, the waterfall, 2, the illuminating gas. The fifth piece, which you will see tonight, is called Poetic Justice, and was finished only very recently, I guess on the 13th or 14th of last month. The sixth part, which is much shorter than the others, and is a kind of animated film, was also finished quite recently. As long as I'm giving acknowledgments, the track for that film was made on a Buchla synthesizer at the University of Pittsburgh. Special effects, the last part, is 10 minutes and 30 seconds long. The other 4, which you will be seeing tonight, average about 32 minutes long, which means that with a minute or two between the parts, it's reasonable for me to warn you that the whole work as it stands will run 2 hours and 25 minutes or something like that. I don't propose really to attempt to talk about them in between, but of course, with whoever is here after the thing is over, I will then propose to entertain whatever praises and damnations are offered. I think that's all I really can say beforehand. I'm at your service.
People want to come closer, and be easier to communicate.
I'm entirely yours. What's left of me?
So this is 5 parts of a 6-point poem.
Yes.
And the 6th part is in a staging possibly.
It's in progress.
I had difficulty seeing relatedness of these films as part of one film.
Would you like me
Please.
to explain why I think they're related to each other? Well, there's a kind of single action, a single shape that I feel is repeated within each film, in the course of each film or each piece, in sometimes many times within a specific individual piece, and then again over the whole group of pieces, or over the whole work. And that is, how shall I describe this, a kind of descending curve of apparent emptying of the frame. And to complement that, an ascending curve in which the frame is filled with something else. And I think probably I can demonstrate that most easily with perhaps the first film and the last. In the first film, one sees as one believes an image, and that kind of first slice off the surface is the photograph that is being burned. The photograph of the darkroom where all the photographs were made, Carl Andre and his metronome, and so on. And as one looks at that image, or what one believes to be the image. It is consumed. It disappears before one's eyes. The screen slowly becomes emptied of that image. And then, of course, as it were paradoxically, when the image is wholly consumed, one finds that there is just as much to see as there was before. There is now the crawling cinder, let's say, which is more ambiguous, perhaps, than the kind of locked-in, specified image. And it is possible, I suppose, to even to import into those cinders illusions of one kind and another in the imagination. Finally, the whole film itself undergoes this act of emptying, this process of emptying, at the very moment when one is expecting a kind of, a climax in some sense or other. The whole series of deferments and anticipations have presumably been working up to the revelation of this, whatever it is, this terrorizing speck of information captured fortuitously by the camera. There is nothing. The frame is empty, and then, I hope at least, yet replete and populated, for an instant at least, by whatever each person has imagined for the next photograph. There obviously cannot be an infinite number of photographs, so that if they are out of sync with their own commentary by one, and if there is a photograph that is never commented upon, then there is a photograph also at the other end that will never be shown. In the second film, Critical Mass, I think also a kind of emptying of different form, a different sort takes place. At the very time when the illusion is perhaps most convincing, when all the bits of dialogue are in full lip sync and so forth. The film is also most assertive as an artifact. It is most often cut. The kind of choreography of both the voices and the movement and the shadows and so forth is most obtrusive, and slowly that synchronization, as well as the kind of insistence upon the film as an aggressively present made thing, slowly sort of comes apart at the same time, until at the end of the film they have drifted completely apart, and one is engaged, or I myself at least am engaged, in again a kind of a process in which I am trying to remember something that I have already learned about what I am seeing, so that having been through the continuous dialogue twice, there is lip reading going on from much earlier in the sequence. One is synthesizing an illusion out of less and less, and in a way the illusion of a work of art out of less and less. Third film, I think is more complex, certainly much more complex than the second in my mind. But it passes through a series of stages, in the first of which there is effort to get glimpses of things, to see things, to peek at things. Then, as a few things begin to come clearly through the hole through which the animal is trying to see out, an effort, a little bit of an effort, which grows in intensity and frequency to try to suggest the shape of what is more clearly glimpsed by imitating it, by miming it with the shape of the hand, trying to conform consciousness in some way to a thing seen, which culminates in the hexagons, where it's almost possible to imitate the hexagons with the little hole, the little polygon that you can make through the center of your hand, a kind of instant in which it does strike through and you really see the polygons for a second, fudged by the static of the sort of looking process, but still there. And then more and more a drifting away from that. It becomes more and more clearly impossible really to kind of match consciousness to the shape of a thing beheld. And finally, as it goes out into more and more of a silhouette, what becomes more emphatic in the film is just the little shape that is being made itself, the kind of the perceiving process itself, at least a sort of metaphor for it in the shape of the little shifting and mutating keyhole through which one is looking out. Not much to do but attempt to keep a little bit track of the terrain over which one is walking. But anyway, a general movement from looking at things through a hole to looking at the shape of the hole itself, so that as one kind of effort empties, another kind of effort again fills. In the fourth, there's actually the fifth film in the cycle, there is always something to see in the frame, and what one is seeing, of course, is just the edge of a table and the little cactus and the cup of stale coffee and some pieces of paper upon which there is writing. And if you engage at any level at all in this activity of constructing this movie, which is in a dim way specified on the cards, then very slowly, I think the frame begins to fill, the form begins to fill with the slides and loops and footage and glimpses and so forth of your own or of one's own. It does say your own and your lover's own store of images, things seen, dreams, hypnagogic images, haunting images that come from various places. And then the last very short film mimes, I think, in its incessant attempt to end. It begins by attempting to end. It is constantly undergoing a kind of the pitch itself, and the duration of the little notes is constantly falling into a basin, if you will. I mean, if I mean, I don't want to impose fountains or laughing hyenas or giggling people or anything on it. But it is descending and it is losing energy all the time and trying to end. At the same time, at least in our culture, I think just those combinations of notes do suggest to us images of some kind with which we populate what I feel that I quite emphatically delimit as a frame, and the frame I equate here with the boundary of what is kind of consciously perceived and imagined and created. So that the last film is a kind of very compressed, in my view, model of these two actions. Yes?
In the last film, you also feel that something would be replaced by something else? Something
I do, yes, I do. I mean, there is that frame, and we have all of us spent, I think, many hundreds and thousands of hours of looking at that confined space. There is a, I think the cinema screen, along with many other things, that it is culturally a fixed rectangle at which we are looking with great expectation and great concentration. And we have built in, as much as anything else, the boundaries of the frame itself as a kind of little model of what it is to be intensely conscious, so that the frame, just as presented as a kind of supreme artifact, the frame which surrounds all cinema, I think is in our experience replete, even as it is empty. It is free, perhaps more to contain than anything that we might feel about it.
Well, I see the relationship of what you say. At the same time, I also think that it's like forcing emphasis on it in order to put this thing together. For instance, Zone's Lemma, it used to be within the series. I could really name hundreds of films that follow the procedure of transformation as you watch it. Including even like the whodunit, which goes from a question to an answer. It's like one thing that can be found in the film. If like your perception of a certain phenomenon going on in the film changes at some point. For instance, Ernie Gare's transparency, that can be included in this. At some point, you stop seeing it a certain way and seeing it another way. For instance, like talking about the shape, within the hand,
yeah.
Within the canvas here, and just endless. It almost could be found in almost every film. One could, if one worked at it, one would find the way that one thing is going out and something is coming in, including like the adventure film, which is a process of like going through one, say going back to even like the first adventure film we know about coming away, like Sinbad or Ulysses. There's one complex which is full of possibilities. The possibilities are explored, and at when the possibilities begin to diminish in richness, the hero goes on to another area of possibility. So it's one thing emptying, usually something begins to improve, and then he enters a new field. It's like
well, but I mean, you're just saying that you're saying, as it were, that most films can be seen as a kind of picaresque, in which one of Ulysses' adventures shades off into another of Ulysses' adventures imperceptibly.
Adventure film as another example of this kind of emptying and filling, all this transformation that takes place. What about Brackett is art of vision? You see, it's a transformation of seeing at some point. It's also you can say it's emptying.
Okay, as far yeah.
And allowing another kind of fulsome experience take place. It's like an idea that can be related to almost any film in almost any company become part of this series on that basis.
I think we're not talking about the same thing. I'm not talking about transformation of a thing into something else. I'm talking about an emptying out of retinal or material or illusionistic repleteness and its gradual replacement with a repleteness which is of, in a way, a very purely mental order, a kind of the replacement of, as it were, of a physical resonance in the object with a resonance within the mind. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, that's much more specific now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't think that there are I mean, there are undoubtedly other films. Being an American, I tend to discover the moon every 2 weeks and you know, jump around and try to tell everybody that I've made a tremendous discovery, the moon. There are surely other films in which this takes place, but I don't think with such explicitness and such deliberate attention, as it were. I mean, certainly a very much of very much of what I do grows in my mind because I have been impregnated by seeds that have shot out of the screen from other people's work over a very long period of time. But there are many seeds that are shooting out of that screen, and this is perhaps an implication in many films that has seized me specifically during the last year or so. It has also something, of course, to do with my own work. A lot of the work that I did before I finally got Zorn's Lemma together had to do with rehearsing at least some of the things that film is involved with, and a lot of what that film was involved with was trying to get together into a single work coherently, a very large mass of material to pack the frame as full as possible with the state of my seeing, let's say, and my thought about what I had seen up to that time. When I finished that film, I felt that at least, as of that particular time, 1970, I had stuffed it about as full as I could stand. I had got about as much into it as I could. I had at least at the instant that I saw that film completed finally and had some time to think about whether I was satisfied, I felt that I had put into it 70% or some nominal percentage, it didn't matter, a lot, very much of what I could say with reasonable honesty that I knew up to that time. All right, that is a certain, that represents a certain point in not even my growth or development, but my change, my process as well, as a mind, as an intellect, or what have you. And then I did not, for 9 months, make another film. And during that 9 months, I began to be sort of slowly gnawed at by a series of other problems and other options, which went very much in the opposite direction. That is, I became interested in the possibility of, from very little, not in a kind of quote, minimalist sense, not in a doctrinaire sense, but from not very much, trying to extract enough juice and aroma and so forth to populate the frame in the understanding of it, the kind of later understanding of it, to fill it with that as much as it had been filled before with this kind of physical implosion of 7 years or 12 years of Manhattan, for instance, and all the concerns and all the things that had come showing in upon me during that time had physically stuffed the frames in Zorn's Lemma. Presumably, if I have emptied the frame in a certain sense, to the eye, it will be only then to fill it again with something else at some later time.
Well, if only like to make this idea, clear, it's worth, the films being brought into relation to me, and you're saying this is part of, the 6-part film. At the same time, even when you say before, become more explicit and say we're going from illusionism, to going away from that into or like dropping it out and getting to just an idea, a mental conception. This, like this happens in any kind of formal work, where one is concerned with the form.
Very well.
The form of expression, from being just a expression into being an artifact itself. The sentence takes on,
very well.
values, the paragraph, and the book becomes a book, not just a story.
Yes, I agree, of course. I mean, I don't claim to have invented the formal cinema in this work or anything like that. But I do think I have put a certain kind of process in understanding, or several sections of it, as it were, slices through different parts of the process under a kind of microscope. And I think they can, it can be turned over. I mean, it's a solid with 6 faces or something like that, which can be subjected to closer scrutiny than this kind of thing perhaps has been available for in a kind of massive and connected way before. I'm not saying that was the only thing I had in mind, or my only goal, for instance. I mean, as I think is readily clear, there are other things going on also at the same time. Yes?
Do you think these films moved anybody in this audience tonight? What kind of reaction do you expect?
What kind of reaction well, now. As for whether they moved anyone, well, I always hope for 3 things. Not only that I have moved someone. There was some medieval philosopher who said that works of art could possibly do three things, possibly, in the happiest cases, all of them, that they could teach, move, and delight. And that those three things could perhaps be fused. Obviously, I moved some people because not all the audience is still here. I mean, I moved some people literally, you know, clean out the door. Other people were perhaps moved, at least, and I'm perfectly serious about this, moved at least to curiosity about, you know, I would not conjecture what, you know, what the hell I could possibly have meant, or what have you. I would hope I managed to delight someone at some moment, or for many moments. I would hope that I managed to teach someone something. But as to what kind of reaction I expect, I mean, obviously I expect hugs and kisses, the Nobel Prize, and you know, all those things. I think quite seriously that I make it very explicit in the film Poetic Justice that I seek whatever reaction you can, reaction, I don't like that word. Let's stick with feeling. That's a nice old Anglo-Saxon verb, to feel. Whatever feeling you can intensely construe for yourselves, you see. I mean, you, all of the people in this room, or I assume, you know, unless you came in the last 5 minutes, you know, to see not the art but the artist, you know, in his role as Little Red Riding Hood, or what have you, have witnessed, have simply witnessed this this thing which has taken place. I make my things to, this is a two-part proposition. I make my things to serve my own needs. I do not believe that I am so peculiar that I do not have needs shared by other persons. As the calculus of what anybody else, you know, the person you know most intimately, yourself a year from now even, you know, not the same person, attempting to figure what that person wants or what they will like, I cannot even conceive of a God with a mind so intricate that being would be capable of getting together all the things that they would need to know to make that kind of prediction. You might yourself need these films, you know, in 5 years more than you have needed them tonight, or conversely, you might have needed them a year ago more than you need them tonight. You see?
Do you think that a prologue of a lot of other films of this nature is needed? Because, like, I found the film tedious, and maybe it's just because I'm not really familiar. I haven't seen a lot of films along this line, but just coming out of, you know, watching television, watching movies, I just found them kind of way overdone. And I thought that, like, the ideas that were could have been stated in much less time.
Well,
I can see. I mean,
if I had known of a way to state them in much less time, I quite frankly would have been delighted to do so. If you think they could be stated in much less time and believe that they are worth stating, then I cordially invite you to do so. I wonder what you mean by the word idea. I mean, if my only idea, for instance, in Poetic Justice were to, you know, pull some kind of trick, let us say, and put sentences on a table or something like that. Presumably I could have established the high water mark for that particular shot, you know, with 2 or 3, and we could have done it all. I mean, I feel that there's more extensive work for all of us to do.
You could have written a poem.
Well, no, that's really an interesting question, I guess. As a poem, I'm not sure I would claim that text is any great shakes, you see. Quite frankly, as a script to be, what is the word, visualized or something like that, as a script to be handed to a director and made into a conventional film, it passes through a number of changes, of course. I mean, it begins, the first tableau has all the earmarks of being the kind of script that you see in those incredibly corny books about how to make movies, where it tells you how to make sort of hokey high school narrative movies, and they give you little